Welcome to the Sourcing Hero podcast, produced by Una, a group purchasing organization that empowers sourcing heroes, and Art of Procurement, the world's largest procurement podcast network. I'm your host, Kelly Barner. The goal of the Sourcing Hero podcast is to capture the epic stories of people who are rising up and beating the odds to create exceptional value within procurement, directly from those heroes themselves.
Today, my guest here on the Sourcing Hero podcast is Dr. Shanda Gore. Dr. Gore is the founder and CEO of Mays Associates, as well as the author of a new book titled The PinLeader Path: Identify, Engage, and Develop Effective Human and AI Leadership for Your Organizational Culture. So, hi, Shanda. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Hi, Kelly. It's great to be here.
Now, we are going to talk about your book. We're going to apply the lessons of your book to some of today's top news stories. But first, we want to get to know you a little bit more. What would you like to share with people about your professional journey to this point?
Well, it starts off in the corporate area and it ends more in like an educational area, meaning I have actually started working in corporate in promotional products and in working in marketing promotional products many, many moons ago. And that's where my leadership journey started too, because I started working with leaders there with both our client base as well as our sales force. And so as I journeyed along with my experiences, I found that going back to school, I got my master's, and then I went and started to look at exploring what a doctorate would look like in this area. And so my journey out of demands for being relevant, experienced in the area, I went to school as well as made sure that my experiences both in corporate and then going into higher education were relevant to the topic. And leadership it's both a challenging and an evolving area. Yeah. It's not the same every day. And so this is why it's so critically important to really support one another as leaders and to make sure there's good, solid information out there to help with decision making, because all leaders need a little help and they always need professional development.
And one of the things that this audience in particular will be happy to hear is that you, on that journey, have had some experience with sourcing and procurement. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and also the impression that it left you with of people that work in the field?
So again, I was thinking about with promotional products, it's been a number of years since I've worked in that area, but it's still in many ways the same as I talk with colleagues that are actually in there and working in providing good, solid marketing items so that companies and organizations, their vision and mission can be felt through whatever items that they're actually giving out, so that the name or the organization stays top of mind for their clients. And so I would say that, my experience with that was really eye-opening because I knew the power of marketing, but I didn't really understand all the power of the things that you leave behind and the impressions that you can have. And so that's the same with leadership, is what impression are you leaving behind? What type of culture, when you're not necessarily in that space with your team, what expression are you leaving with those around you and with your clients? And what does that look like? So I found that first step with items helped me grow. And then when I went into more of in higher education and I worked with senior leaders, and then I started coaching with others that were in the space, that were entrepreneurs and sole proprietors and those that were leading large organizations and working with retreats and teams. That leadership development is so critically important. And a lot of that, what legacies or culture are you leaving behind when you're working with others or when you're trying to leave an impression with other individuals like your clients?
Now, let's talk more specifically about your perspective, your philosophy, however you like to put it, on leadership. In your book, you talk about this idea of a pin leader. Can you tell us a little bit about what a pin leader is?
Yes. So that concept came up 20 years ago as I was actually studying those leaders who were the most effective, meaning those that went into an organization and led teams to the next level, whatever that level was. And so there were three major attributes of those leaders that came true to me. So there's theory and then there's practice. And so I was finding is those most effective leaders were sharp. So sharp meaning they had the experience and they had the education in their particular area and whatever that area is. So this is across 20 different industries. And then they had strength of character. Strength of character carried quite a bit. Teams really wanted to be led by those they could trust. Teams wanted to hear from leaders that they know that are credible, and that when the leader is speaking, they're speaking to truth and they were transparent. So strength of character. And the last attribute that I know among the most effective leaders across all those industries are those that had a plan that was not only in their head, but was written out and had a built in pivot. So when they were talking with their teams, they were communicating well with the team on what the plan was, and the team had a part in that plan. And then they felt part of the solution to that plan. So they were the most effective. And it didn't matter if there was a small organization to a very large, in a $1 billion industry. And so when I talk to leaders, I'm finding these nuances, and it kept coming up, coming up. And one metaphor, one item that has all of these pieces is actually a pen that actually has the sharpness, that strength of character, and then it's straightforward, and you're able to penetrate into culture and to help shape that. So that goes into the fabric and what that looks like and pulling it all together. So it's really important for pens to stay sharp.
True.
And if you use a pen to the point where it's just, or it doesn't keep itself sharp, it can be dull. And if you can see the difference with a pen. You don't want to use a dull pen. You don't want to use a poor pen that's bent. It's been through a lot. It needs to relax, regenerate. And those best effective leaders do that. They build in time to regenerate and to stay sharp.
And it's interesting that you mention culture as part of that explanation, because certainly we spend a lot of time learning and thinking about effective leadership. We also spend a lot of time thinking and talking about corporate culture. How do those two things intersect?
Well, every organization, within an organization, there are different departments. If you're very large, and every department or group or wherever they're located has their own culture within that. And that culture could be tough as leather. It could be a relaxed culture. And you know what it is when you go into a new environment and you start to talk to people, and they kind of give you the lay of the land on what people do within that culture. It could be someone comes in and makes the coffee every morning. It's just something that is part of the culture that they do. Or people go out to lunch and social. It's part of the culture that they have. There's also this work, they have systems in place. And so it's really important for a leader to understand that the systems and the culture are tied together, and that depending on how and who the pins are that are there, they can drive that culture. Now I want you to think very carefully. Think of an instance of someone, maybe you went into a workplace and you started working in the first couple of days of that workplace. There were certain individuals that you didn't quite jive with, that maybe they might have actually been the people that some individuals say, you might want to stay clear of them because of X, Y, and Z. Or you might avoid someone. You see them coming and you duck out of their way because you don't want to get engaged with them because they bring a certain culture with them that maybe it's not good for you, right? And so I think it's important for us this human element, we cannot dismiss this. No matter how advanced we get, building relationships are really important to any organization, and keeping top of mind that the care that you exhibit in those organizations, that attracts good talent. So there is this tie to solid recruitment and retention of great talent, because the excellent talent have places to go. They can be recruited away. And you want to be creating a culture that people want to work in, they want to thrive in, and they want to stay in.
It's funny you tell that story about, people within the culture where you get advice very quickly, or you figure out very quickly the hard way, this is a person to steer clear of. I'm not going to get myself in trouble by naming any names, but I didn't have to think very long. It was a few jobs ago, nobody at Art of Procurement, but a few jobs ago, where It's just that person that is the archetypal steer clear, try not to get assigned to a project with, supervised by, maybe pass the coffee machine if you get over there and that person is there, whatever you have to do to minimize contact. Sadly, I think almost everybody has worked with somebody like that.
I know they have. And there's always someone, whoever that is. And
Yes.
then there's the individuals that come into the environment that are the balls of energy, that are the positive force. People are attracted to them, meaning they want to be around them. Let's go catch coffee, let's talk. And they want them on their whatever the assignments or jobs that they have, because they bring a positive input to it and they work hard. And so those individuals, you don't want them to become dull or bent out of shape either, because individuals see that and they'll keep saying, well, I want you on my team, I want you on my team, they need to also be cared for, because you don't want to lose them or for them to run into a situation where they can't function anymore, or they go somewhere else. So there's both sides of the coin here on individuals that really attract the energy. And imagine if you had everyone on your team that was positive and wanted to row in the same direction you're going in, right? And wanted to put the fabric together to sew together and works well with other departments. That's a great formula. And to do that takes an intentionality of working to make sure that your team has the professional development, has the support they needed, can take a break when they need to, and to have that care and the communication of how everything works together. Imagine that team. That's an unstoppable team.
Absolutely. Now, in your experience, Shanda, are there good company cultures and bad company cultures, or just different company cultures that each of us or groups of us may not connect with?
So I'm going to be fair. Bad and good actually have judgment assigned to them.
Yep.
There are individuals with personalities that they would say, that is my cup of tea. That's my jam. That's where I want to be. This is how I match up. And this is why it's very important to have solid relationships with your HR departments and to understand the culture that you're having someone. You may find someone who's fantastic for the job. On paper looks great, but if the department has a culture and it's efficient and it's doing the work that's supposed to be doing, and this individual doesn't quite jam in that culture because of whatever reasons. There's a bunch of reasons. Okay. You want to be mindful of that. Is it the culture's bad, or is it the person is bad and they can't fit in? No, it's not the right fit for that. And so we have to be mindful of trying to make sure that the culture you're going in, if there's expectation that people are social and interacting and building relationships with one another, and that's part of that culture, and you put somebody in there that they're not comfortable with it for whatever reason, you may be setting that individual up to fail. Finding the right fit is truly, it's just, I can't even say critical. It's not even, if you don't find it, you lose so much money and resources and leaving that on the table when you don't have that. And so it's important to have people with interaction, going beyond Zoom. I can't stress it enough.
My goodness, yes.
Right. Being in person does matter. These soft skills that individuals have had where they put that label on it, they're not really soft. I believe that these skills will become, as more of technology and AI become more prevalent in the workplace, these are hardcore skills that you need, and they will become assets for your company and organization. Those that can build relationships, keep with the human element, exhibit care and empathy, they're going to be the ones to help build bridges for other organizations. And I think that those skills will go even higher, because unfortunately right now, a number of individuals don't have those skills. And so we need to work on that and encourage it.
And I do think a lot of people are concerned with the advent of AI. We've just talked about leadership. We've talked about culture. We've talked about humanity and how different personalities and traits either work together or don't. I think some people are very enthusiastic about the potential of AI, but there's also this sense of how is it going to change the way we interact? How is it going to maybe change the number of jobs that are a part of this team, or what roles exist within this team? How are you seeing leaders and companies deliberately factor the good capabilities of AI, but also recognize maybe some areas where concerns arise, either at their level or among the different members of the team?
Yes, this is probably, I do so many workshops, and I just passed my 22,000th individual has been through workshops with me. And I look back on all the time I spent with the different organizations, and especially when we're talking about retreats and senior leader teams that I worked with. And let me just say this, I've had presidents in front of me, and I've had line managers, frontline managers in front of me. And there's this discussions are the same as what's going to happen. I'm going to say to you that if you're listening to individuals who can tell you definitely, oh, this is what's going to happen, this job will be gone, that's fortune telling. I would not suggest that you listen to those voices because they don't have the full scope. It reminds me of when the internet came out. And there was this big discussion. I remember I was actually in college, I think during my first degree. It was, yeah, during my bachelor's. And I remember them saying libraries are going to go away. Internet's going to come in and all the libraries are going to go away. And if you're living right now and you're in a town, you probably will be able to find a library somewhere near
That's right.
by you. The libraries did not go away. What the libraries did, though, is they pivoted. And this is why with AI, we need to keep in mind, you're going to have, if you're watching sci-fi, you're going to have, I've had individuals that we do surveys. Our firm gets involved with engagement surveys, and we've had from the overlord Terminator to all the way to, I love this. I love my AI co-pilot, right? So you're going to have this continuum of how the approach, and the leaders that are the most effective, I talk about in my book, there are 4 intelligences that effective leaders use. The first one is emotional intelligence, which many people know what that is, right? Keeping control. Intrapersonal, which is knowing thyself, what drives you, what triggers you, so that you can also help with the emotional intelligence. Interpersonal, which is relationship, which is what we've been talking about, but it's this artificial intelligence. The most effective leaders are actually saying, you know what? I'm not running fearful from this. I want to engage, and I want to do it in a way that helps my staff not be fearful of it. So conversations like, will my job exist? Right now, if your job as it currently looks like may reshape, what skills can we build with you, valued employee, valued individual with my staff, valued client? What can we build across to build this bridge that it's about you using it to help be more efficient and not as a replacement of you? And that's the same with the libraries. This reminds me, the libraries didn't get replaced. What they did have, though, and I was on an AI symposium panel, and I talked with a group of students, and I asked them, what do you think about with libraries? They didn't say book. They use the word book with me. They use services that the library provides, media services that the library provides. And so it has been successful in evolving and still being an asset to the community. I think AI is evolving and is right now I call it the reluctant leader. I do call it that. I profiled it in the book. If you ask it flat out, it may or may not say that it's a leader today. It may say something like, my job is to support you. You can ask it questions about, like, what do you think about XYZ? And it is, the algorithm may say, whatever AI agent you're using may give you different answers on different days. And I think it's important for leaders to understand that it is only as good as what information is out there.
Yeah.
2, it does hallucinate. People say, what do you mean hallucinate? Hallucinate means if it doesn't have the knowledge, it is known to fill in with information that's not true. They don't want to say it lies. They just want to say it hallucinates. Okay. So that it hallucinates. And then the last part of that is it still has built-in biases. An example that I'll give you, I let AI tell me about myself for about 8 months. And for months it went on, and it told me that I was an expert in my area. I'm like, okay, check. That I was the president of Mays and Associates, which is a leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building firm. Fantastic. And then it says he does great work.
Oh, so close.
So close. So I thought, okay, so now it thinks that I'm a man, and it thought I was a man for about 8 months. I don't self-identify as a man, but the algorithm wasn't sure. And so I made a choice then, and this is what I'm going to tell leaders who are listening or watching, is that you have control of your own story. If you work with AI in a way that helps it understand what you do, what you don't do, what your vision is, what your mission is, who you are, it will tell that story when someone else asks that question. So I would stress to you is be the person to be in control of your own story and your organization. And when I did that, I made a choice and I said, let me do this. It got richer with information. Clients could find me faster and understand the work that I do and what I don't do. And then the work that I don't do, I was able to guide them where they could find the work, the support. So for those sitting around and say, well, how do I go about this? Tomorrow, you could have a staff meeting and you could start talking about, let's talk about AI and how it impacts them. How are you feeling about AI? Because you may find some different answers. Some are very happy and some are like a little worried, and they may not even answer right away because they're scared. I'll give you another instance. I've got a coach. I do a lot of executive coaching, and I had someone who's about a few years away from retiring. And they flat out said, if I can retire and not ever use AI, it's a good day. So there's your continuum. And I've got others. Yeah, I've got others saying, oh, it helps me with my golf game. Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Or for people using it to write like thank you notes and Christmas cards, right? So to some extent, where it can help us is only limited through our own imagination. But I do also think, and I'm going to bring this back around to sort of the human side. One of the things that you and I ended up talking about when we chatted last was the idea of etiquette in the modern workplace. Now, if we think in terms of continuums, I'm going to out myself. I'm the person that still sends the handwritten thank you note, right? I'm very like traditional, pleases and thank yous and all of that punctuation, even in my text messages, which makes my teenagers cringe. But I like etiquette. But I know some people might view that as constricting or confining, or an email is faster and is just as effective as a handwritten note. So these ideas of etiquette and how they connect to our interpersonal relationships are constantly evolving. It's like another angle on culture. Can you talk a little bit about either your perspective on etiquette in the workplace, or maybe some of the trends that you're seeing through workshops and coaching?
So let's talk about that AI component right there, because there is patterns going on, and you probably, for some individuals saying, I'm not even sure if I'm using AI right now or not. But I do have this AI co-pilot that's attached to my emails, and I like to let it, rewrite my sentences. So first I'll say is that's great. That is a step toward that, and it does help you with grammar, and it will help you with reworking. And for those that used to write emails, this was me many moons ago, and I used to write it, and I wasn't sure if it was the right word, and I would save it in drafts, and I'd get up the next day, hours and hours and hours, right? The one thing I will say is that remember, if you're allowing AI to write your emails, it will, in fact, write your emails, but you are responsible for whatever the content in that email is. Yes. So I mentioned hallucinations. If it has to do with facts that need to go into it, and you send it and it's not correct, that individual on the receiving side is not going to say, I'm going to hold AI accountable. No, they're going to hold whoever's signature is on there. Yeah. AI has a tendency, and when I first started working with it, to put capital letters and everything, and to exclamation marks. And as we as humans are looking at that, interpretation of all caps could mean shouting.
Yes.
Could mean that you're emphasizing something that maybe you didn't mean to. And exclamation marks. Are you happy all the time? Are you saying exclamation mark? Hello, exclamation mark. how's your day? Exclamation mark, question mark. AI will have a tendency to do that. It wasn't until I interacted with it and said, are you emotional? And AI responded back, no, I don't exhibit emotions. And I said,
Mm.
well, why are you using exclamation marks when I'm asking you? And this is a chat GPT conversation. And it said, do you not like that? And I said, no, it's not appropriate for what I'm saying. Okay. And do you know it has not used an exclamation
Oh,
mark
interesting.
ever since?
So it toned down for you.
It did, because it actually said you're right, and it stopped. And so this is our part to teach it so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. Exclamation marks, capital letters, bold, underlining, it just sends subtle, probably unintentional
Yeah.
microaggressions across in an email. You don't want that to happen. That's not the impression it may not even be your tone. And so that's
True.
why it's really important. So that's one thing, that etiquette is you should be answering quickly. And I say within a 48, 24-hour period, depending on what your industry and if it's the weekend. And then there's also this etiquette of understanding of like how you're wording it and what your message is and how. So that's just in an email. If you're working in a culture where you have individuals around you and you have individuals that are not interacting with you, they choose not to talk with you, that sends also another message.
Yeah.
But I always say benign intent for my folks out there is one of my, I have 67 pinpoints in my book. And I say benign intent. Did this person intend to harm me? And not to jump first that was their intention. Maybe they just didn't know. And then start there. I would like for individuals, so I say hesitate, then educate. So as a starting point, and that would be good office etiquette for anyone.
Which is excellent advice. And it gives us a great opportunity to bring you, Shanda, into the Sourcing Hero tradition. This is going to be fun. So I'm going to give you two questions. You can pick either one. And I've heard a couple of hundred answers at this point, but I haven't heard a wrong one. So here are your choices. Either what does the idea of a sourcing hero mean to you? Or if we think a little bit more broadly, what do you think heroism looks like in a business context?
Mm-hmm. So I started by saying hesitate, then educate. When you have someone who's may come to you in a way that you don't appreciate, or you may not be able to understand like what their intention is. But the last part of that I didn't say, and this is where the hero comes in, is there's hesitate, then educate, and then I'm going to say advocate.
Mm.
When someone's not in the room, and when voices speak up and they say things that you know not to be true or not to be relevant to maybe the job that's going on, advocate for the individual and stand up and saying, why do you think that? Even asking the question back sends a signal to the individual that maybe this isn't okay. And then two, this isn't really wanted in this environment. Individuals who laugh and go along with it, sometimes it's nerves, they're
Yeah.
not sure, or they don't want it directed toward them. But I would say in a solid, effective culture, us being able to be that hero or shero is really important for us to be able to understand what advocacy means, and so that people are not standing alone, because sometimes people leave jobs not because of the job, but they leave it because of the people.
That's
and
true.
and you want to be the place that people want to work, and that's where a hero shero would look like.
That is absolutely fantastic. And I think it gives people just enough of an understanding about your book and your approach to want to learn more. And so if we want to help connect them with you online, help them learn more about your book, where would you suggest that people go to connect with you?
So you can go to my website, shandagore.com. You can also go to mazeassociatesltd.com. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm pretty approachable. And if you need anything, if you have the book and you're saying, you know what, there's case studies that are in this book. There's a QR code that's in this book to get you connected. If you want to do the case study and actually see what other people are saying and answering the questions at the end of each of the chapters. There's ways to get connected in there. And so, take me up on my offer, reach out to me. I'd love to engage with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast. Join us again next time for more true stories of sourcing and business heroism performed by your colleagues and peers. Look for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, don't forget, sourcing heroism is taking place all around us every day. Keep your eyes open and you're bound to see it. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelly Barner. Stay well and always remember that you can be a hero too.